We're talking today with Mr. George Keller of Sparta, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Keller, can you begin by giving us some background on yourself?
Yes, I was born on a farm, one of 7 siblings. I was the 6th of 7 siblings. The oldest one was born, it's important, in 1900.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was born in 1916. So he was 18 years old when I was 2 years old, and he was inducted into the First World War. And his lot was before he was down in Fort Custer, and when he got that flu the year of 1918, and he nearly died there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not actually serving in anything, but he had been inducted.
Right.
So he lived a normal life. Then the rest of them, we all had diabetes, and we had bad hearing from my father's side of the family. With one exception, we have been very free of most things except diabetes, which we all have, and we don't hear well. Well, then anyway, I started grade school in a rural school, which was very popular then, especially in the counties like Lake County, where this was. So when I was 11 years old, I had never seen electricity.
Mm-hmm.
We moved to Everett, and they had a brand new school. So I was enrolled in a nice new building, and I graduated from there in 1935 with honors, you might say, because I enjoyed the academic thing.
All right.
I was too small to be much of a scout, for football and that type of thing, even though I wanted to be. So I then, when I graduated, it was in the height of the Depression. My father had died of diabetes in 1932, and I was 16. So I, in this building, new building, they had what they called a county normal. So I went there for a year and got education enough to teach in a rural school for 2 years, taking up so many college credits. So then, when I graduated from, I went to teaching in a rural school over in Keller County. And this is important. Money was, at that time, I paid $15 a month for board and room from a farmer near there. I was not making the kind of money that you could get to buy a car.
Right.
So I had to go over there and stay over the week. So that's the way it was. That time, they closed the school for the first time in Michigan and started what we knew and had never heard of as, what do you call them? You transport them by truck. What do you call this? The word is...
Did they have a consolidated school district?
Consolidation, yes. So that school was consolidated to what was then Michigan County Normal School. No, the State Central Michigan Teachers College, which is now Central University.
Central Michigan University, right.
So that school closed, and the next year, schools, in that time, if you could get a school of any kind, you were lucky. So the nearest school that I could get was over in, right near here, what's this county just next to us? Ottawa County.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I got a school over here, and I came 100 miles over here to get a school. And then, so I taught for a few years in school, got my degree, AB, and so then in 1957, I had been principal of several schools, small schools, when I was asked to come to Sparta here. So I came over here, and there was a new school, 12 miles road. So I enrolled there as a principal. I was there 10 years. until 6 years minus 80. Oh, let's see, 6 years. I retired from teaching. I'll put it this way: in 1974. 6 years prior to that, I decided I was going to teach a little while, so I taught 6 years.
Right.
Retired in 1974. However, when I got out of the Army, before I got out of the Army, an opportunity came through from Patton that any school I might want to go to a university in Europe, especially England, I was good to go at no expense. So I wanted to go at Exeter and just to be there to see about it. However, it was not available. So it wasn't my next choice, was the University of Edinburgh. However, I ran into a problem because when I was in the Army, I was not on a passport. I was not an American citizen in Germany. So I had to go to Glasgow and get permission to go to Glasgow or to go to Edinburgh. However, in Edinburgh, I did not take a course. I enrolled. I wanted to know about what I would like to know about all the schools systems in the British Isles, and I found out they were all very similar to what France was doing. All the curriculum was very much laid out, stereotyped, you might say, as it was in Michigan when I first started. We had all the syllabuses and every grade, every subject. If you did those, you'd come back for the next teacher next year. So that's what it was like there. But this is the difference.
Okay.
A child going to a school in England or in Britain, anywhere in Britain, or the British Isles, at the year of 11, third grade, if they could not matriculate by reading successfully, they went to a trade school. And so I found that that worked out very well, because the child was found himself in a job that would support him, that could be used by the industrial people in the islands.
Right.
And so I think maybe we're missing a point by trying to keep all these youngsters together, whether they can assimilate an educational curriculum or not.
That has kind of taken us a little bit far astray from the original strand of the story.
Yes.
But to go back to your own story more in sequence. So you completed high school, you became a teacher, you taught in small schools and rural schools
Yes.
In Michigan.
Yes.
Then were you a teacher then in 1941 when Pearl Harbor happened?
Oh, yes, I was right over there near where you are. I was teaching Simon School, which is a four-room school, located where Bob Evans now is at the corner of 3 Mile and Walker. Yeah. And I was drafted in February, right out of teaching, right out of school.
Okay, you were drafted in February, but of 43 though, not 42. So
43, yes.
yeah. Okay. Now, before Pearl Harbor had happened, were you paying a lot of attention to the news of the world? Did you know about the war in Europe and that kind of thing?
Before Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
No, we were not. I was very unaware of what the situation was there. In fact, I was in a church up in Muncie Township at the day that happened, and the news came through a flash, and that was it. Next day, we were listening to Roosevelt declare war.
At that point, did you figure that sooner or later you'd be in the war, or did you?
Well, my brother had already been drafted, and he was in Detroit, going back and forth to Battle Creek to help in the hospital over there. So, to bring these two things together, he was over there and he went to D-Day over to France. And I went a year later, just about a year later, to the Battle of the Bulge, which was the Ardennes
Right.
campaign. And so we had never seen each other for a year. I knew he was somewhere and I knew where I was. And eventually, this was an interesting incident, you know, where the institution like that, you don't walk in and say, I want to see my brother.
Mm-hmm.
One day, knock at the door while I was another second lieutenant, got up and answered the door. He said, it's your brother. I thought he was dead, kidding.
Mm-hmm.
My brother stands there with two sidearms like Patton,
Mm-hmm.
right there in the public. I said, how did you get here? I walked out and he said, well, I just went to the gate and I said, my brother's working here, I want to see him. They let me in.
Mhm.
I knew he was lying, see. But it turned out that there was an AWOL up, been put in jail up there,
Mm-hmm.
and the message got down to Marseille, what was called base hospital there. No, Delta base,
Mhm.
Delta base there. And he was sent up there with another guy to get to this guy. And they knew he was coming, they let him in.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
that type of thing is interesting, you know?
Right. Let's get back sort of to the thread of your own story. All right, so Pearl Harbor happens. Now, somewhere in there, you got married?
Yes, no, I was married 1 year previous. I was married in 1942,
Right. So you're married before you're drafted?
yes.
Okay. And then,
My wife and I have been very happily married for 67 years now.
right?
And
Okay, now, what was her reaction when you got drafted?
well, we had an apartment at that time. We didn't want to give it up, and
Mhm.
she was teaching also in Grand Rapids,
Mm-hmm.
and I went down to Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, in the swamp country, and we were very unhappy, of course, for a while. And when I came home on furlough in June of that year, she had made up her mind to give up teaching, come back to. We actually wound up in a new camp in Texas, near Dallas,
Right.
and so then she stayed 6 months with me, and fortunately got pregnant. Anyway, so in July we got the notice that the division would be going somewhere, and she had to decide to come home.
Mm-hmm.
And in December, she gave birth to Daryl. And I knew she was pregnant, and it was during the Battle of the Bulge when she was giving birth, and she almost died of fright. They kept her in the hospital an extra 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, well, I wanted to get pregnant. I
Mhm.
wanted to have something, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was not so unusual
Yeah.
at that time. Yeah. Now,
And he lived very happy.
right, so, okay, so you're at the point when you're drafted then. You're married, then you take us through the process now. You get your draft notice. Where did you have to report to first?
Down to Camp Custer. I had to go down there
Mm-hmm.
for the tests and
Right.
physical and so on. I guess I went to Kalamazoo first for the physical, and then
Mhm.
over there to be trained down for Camp Louisiana.
Yeah,
Of all
you went-
places I didn't want to go.
Right, okay. Now, where in Louisiana was Camp Claiborne? What part of the state
Where
was
part
it?
of
Yeah,
Where was I in Louisiana?
yeah.
I was on the banks of the river that separates Texas from Louisiana, about 100 miles north of Port Arthur.
Okay, so that's like Sabine River or something?
Yes,
Yeah.
Sabine, yes.
All right. That's kind of in the middle of nowhere then.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we were in garrison until August. From February I got there
Mm-hmm.
to August, 6 months. And then this is interesting because they said, well, you're going to go on maneuvers for division maneuvers for 3 months in the swamplands and see how you survive that before we go to Army
Mm-hmm.
headquarters or Army. So it was a real shock because I was I was in a adjutant general situation with all these books and typewriters and all this jazz, you know. Well, I have still a private. I was drawing my KP and so on. So I had to have communication when I got out in the woods. I told them, so they put up a radio tower so that I could get information on personnel amounts, you know, all those things. And I would send them to record services, what do you call them? They had a headquarters service, something like computers. We would send them out one night and get them back the next day. New personnel, new prisoner, new commissioner, non-commissioned officers, so on. So right away I went right to buck sergeant, first promotion. And then I got another promotion when I got out of the camp in Texas.
Okay. Again, I'd like to go back a little bit. Tell me about the basic training process.
Oh,
You get down to Louisiana, what
Yes.
happens?
well, first of all, we had to have the nomenclature of the M1. Do it with your eyes shut, you know, in a dark hole. And we had in the cities fighting under gunfire, muds. The first time we went out there, they were dropping 10 pounds or 25 pounds of flour on us from helicopters. We were on our belly, and that's what
Oh,
I'm not ready
helicopters?
for. See? Well, that was bad. And I had bull neck people bigger than I was pushing me around through the mud. But anyway, I kind of grew up then, you know. I was sort of an academician, I guess you'd call it up to that time. But then I found out what life was like. And in fact, I never had a sick day in my life in 3 years. I grew up, and my pictures will prove that I was equal to the type of thing I was associated with. And then, of course, you had to learn the sharpshooter and all the jazz qualifications. And so, yes, I was a very good soldier.
All right. How did you hold up through the physical training, all the marching and...
We had 3 20-mile marches at about a month apart, something like that. Then we had a 25-miler in so many hours. And that one I got 2 miles from my return through the woods to the camp. And my knees gave out one. And a big man, friend, not a necessary friend, but he was in the adjutant general's office, picked me up and put me on his shoulders and carried me 2 miles. So I wouldn't have to do this again.
All right. Now, how early in the process were you assigned to the adjutant general's office?
Right away.
Okay.
Before I got off the train, I was put in headquarters. They came through and put headquarters.
Okay.
The next day we went to the adjutant himself, who was a big, burly, big-jawed man. He didn't know anything. Actually, I said, when I say this with the reservations, he was General Army, and he'd been in the First World War, and he never been promoted out of the ranks to a commissioned officer.
Right.
But they needed someone to head up that, so they had people like me with the typewriter. Good. I had special training in writing business letters and all this type of thing. And I was putting endorsements on more or less like you would with a word processor, you know, moving things around.
Right.
So he had a lot of people like that, and I got my first promotion there through him when I was out in the woods.
All right. Now, describe a little bit more what your actual duties were. I mean, what were you responsible for doing?
Okay, G1, 2, 3, and 4 was part of the buildings, the headquarters. In the division headquarters, you had a headquarters company who were responsible for our training, and they were and for our transportation and so on. We were kind of babied in a way.
Right.
There was only about 100 in action in the division headquarters, but there was 200 in the company, headquarters company, to go to motor pool and take us where we need to go and so on, that type of thing. What was your question?
I was asking what your duties were.
The
Yeah.
main thing was every morning, every company, or there were regimental headquarters, of course,
Right.
and there were field artillery units,
Right.
like I show up there.
Right.
They would have to bring all their morning reports to my window and hand them in. It was my job, personally, if I didn't give somebody else, to go through and see that all from duty to sick and sick to work and home from detached service and all this jazz. And be sure that you're right. Otherwise, rations depended on that. So that was one of my jobs. The other job was the adjutant himself never wanted any commissioned officer to appear in camp that might be his superior without his knowledge. So we had to list all the officers in camp, 15,000, I don't know how many officers, commissioned were there. They were under the TO, the Table of Organization, see. So we knew about how many were there. But anyway, he wanted to know how many second lieutenants, first lieutenants, and majors and so on up. He was actually a lieutenant colonel himself, so he wasn't very high on the totem pole, you know. But anyway, then G1 reports used a lot of those figures too, and I had to get them out by noon. And we had no computer, we had no machine, not even. My teaching of mathematics that taught me to be able to add, and I could do these
Right,
columns,
right.
you know, come out with that number before dinner,
Right.
that type of thing, and no machinery to help me. I proved myself very, very over, and I still do that in my own office, even though I'm blind. I have a secretary now who comes here and does my book work, so on. But
All right. So basically, you had what amounted to a valuable kind of specialized skill.
yes,
All right.
very much so.
And sometimes the Army gets things right and they put somebody in a job they're good at, and then sometimes they give the smallest guy in the unit the bazooka. But in this case, they gave you a job that fit. Now, at this stage, were you training with the 103rd Division, or were you just in a training camp where they were training replacements?
No, I was in the 103rd Division,
Okay.
headquarters.
Right. And so you're there, you're with them essentially from the beginning there in Louisiana.
Right.
Right. Okay. And were they just forming the division at the time you got
No,
there?
it had been in the First World War activated. I don't know if they actually worked at it or not. Yes, they did. They were in France where most of the fighting was done,
Okay.
in the trenches, yes.
But it is a division that would have been deactivated after World War I, and then
Yes,
and then reactivated
reactivated
for,
again, yes.
for World War II. So you were there. You were part of the original group in that division,
Yes.
basically. Okay.
They came in there with their bulldozers right in the clay, and there was the elevation of it was such that it was a little above the water levels, and therefore they put when we got a lot of rain, we had 4 foot under our stacks. We had 4 foot poles to hold up the tar paper shacks.
Right.
I must say.
Okay. Now, how long did you spend there in Louisiana?
I was there from February until November. Oh, this I missed to tell you. After the division headquarters, we had Army headquarters. Oh, Army maneuvers. And there was a couple million men there. 2 armies. And this was not tactical all the time, but 5 or 6 days a week we were tactical for 2 weeks. And then you'd get an afternoon off, you could clean out your sacks and so on and get cleaned up and have a beer maybe and some cigarettes. Otherwise, we were as tactical as we were in Europe, more so. It was very, very warlike at that time. And I didn't think it was necessary to dig all those foxholes. I said, if I ever get back to Michigan, I'm going to dig foxholes in the sand for fun.
Well, you couldn't do it in my yard. It's all clay. But all right. So you do that. So you're there, and then from Louisiana,
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Then I went over to Camp Shanks. No,
No, you did. Weren't you in Texas for a while?
as I told you, we went when we came back from furlough. We were there in that business from August until November. 3 months we were tactical,
Right.
except when we were not. And that was worse. That was awful. We never got clean clothing. We would jump in every creek we saw and flop around, wash our clothes. And if we were taken to get a shower on something on a string, the water wasn't there. And we got our water through a little bag that hung in the sun, you know, that type of thing. And we ate out of these tables that were set up out under the woods with birds and snakes around a lot. And the animals out there in the woods were terrible. We had tarantulas and all these weird animals. What's that one that stings you to your tail?
A scorpion.
Scorpions and so on. And the little coral snakes, big snakes too, black snakes. The centipedes there were about that long and about as wide as my hand, about that size. And they were orange. And the guys got so sick of those, they'd stick a stick in them, hold them over the fire, watch them squeal. Well, anyway, then we went back to there, and my wife came down and she stayed till July. She came at Christmas time, and she stayed till July, and then we were going to pull out for somewhere. We were called the Cactus Division. We wore a cactus emblem. And when we went to Europe, I was very surprised. We went to Alsace, Rhine, Alsace,
Yeah.
and I was in the Vosges Mountains most of the time. And actually, the Battle of the Bulge was in the far end of Alsace. And it was quite a dangerous situation, you know. But anyway, then before I left there, we had to go to Texas Airport to go into training for, what do you call these cussed things? They just don't have a motor in them.
Gliders.
Glider training, yes. And we had to learn to put up our own, pack our own
Parachutes?
parachutes, yes. And I'm sure if mine had come down, it wouldn't have come on.
Now, why were
We
they?
all felt the same about it.
Okay. Now why were they training you for gliders? I mean, was that a?
Well, I don't know. My brother was at that time. He was using gliders to get into to Holland at that area, and he was in, I think, 9th Army up there or something. And
That's
so,
true. And I guess late in the war, after.
well, they used them during the invasion, I think.
When
D-Day, didn't
Yeah,
they?
they used them in D-Day. They used them in the Market Garden operation in September of '44 when they went up into the Netherlands and they tried to get across the Rhine. And then when they crossed the Rhine in the spring of '45, at least up in the British sector, they used gliders again one more time. So they were using gliders periodically, but usually that was for the airborne divisions.
Yeah.
So you were just a regular infantry division, but you were getting that training too.
Well, this is interesting too. I was stationed in Delta Base, which is the foot of the Rhone River down at Marseille.
That's right.
And the troops, Patton's outfit from North Africa came up to Anzio in Italy and on up, and the Germans were ahead of them, you know, and they finally got to the Marseille port, and they sunk the half of the French Navy. The other half was the French sunk their other own half. Where was that city down the coast?
Toulon. Toulon was the main naval port.
Toulon?
Toulon, yeah.
Well, anyway, interesting, nice, because I went down there to Delta Base, and I myself walked out. I was going to take a bus out to Toulon, was it? I wanted to see that base to see if it was sunk. And it actually sunk those ships there. And I got on some of these buses that the babies were shitting their pants. Anyway, I got out and walked about the last 2 miles. Yes, but I went from there. I had a battle star for the Battle of Southern France up to Dijon in Louisiana, French. And so then we went on through what was called the Rhineland, which was called the Rhineland campaign, for which I had a battle star. And we got to Ludwigshafen. We had to cross to Mannheim. The the bridge was gone. So we were put across the Rhine on little ships, what do you call little boats?
A landing craft?
Oh
or-
yeah. And we were supposed to go on to Heidelberg, but that was out, so the whole division was ordered to go to Heidelberg, and if it hadn't been much done there, if anything happened, they were to level the town. Well, so we got about 2 more. We had to cross the river in the morning. All those personnel carriers get us all the troops up there. And it was a nice warm day in April, actually. The war was about down. And I remember I was sitting on my overcoat to keep, it was too hot. Well, anyway, we got about 2 miles from Heidelberg, and the notice came out from the what do you call it, the guard, the people up front, the spies, that didn't look like we were going to have to take the thing because the sheets were all falling out the windows of the hotels. So without a shot fired, our whole division went through Heidelberg. And they never fired a shot. We never did. I went back there 10 years later. I was back there in 1990. Actually, it's quite a while. Went to Heidelberg and so on. We were over there a couple of weeks. My wife and I went over to Europe, and my maid sort of followed through where I'd been, camps and so on.
Okay. I kind of want to go back again to kind of the central thread of your story. Tell me a little bit about what you were doing when you were still in Texas. Because you had
In Texas?
when you were in Texas, because that's the period when your wife is down there with you, but
Yes.
before you shipped out.
I was there, and I was in a camp. What the heck was it? It was 5 miles anyway from the town of Crystal. Do you remember the town name?
Where we were in,
What was that town in Texas we stayed in?
Gainesville.
Gainesville,
Okay.
near the border of Oklahoma. Yeah. Well, anyway, I stayed in there. I would come home at night, and I was 5 miles out. I had to get on the boat or on the
On a bus?
at 5 o'clock in the morning. I had to be out and catch the bus back to camp, so I could be in charge of my
Right.
duties there. And my wife would get me up and push me out the door. That type of thing. We had one room in a 4-room house, and there was 2 or 3 other couples that were
Yep.
living there, and one toilet, and plenty of what are those bugs that get everywhere?
Cockroaches or something
Yeah,
else? Yeah.
cockroach. But anyway, it was better. My wife enjoyed the service clubs. She could go and join with the women and have her fun.
And you probably weren't in a swamp anymore either.
No, we were not in swampland, no.
So that was a little better.
We were in the swamp. This was very interesting because we had boys there from New York, and they'd never seen a swamp in their life.
Yep.
And they were so afraid of the alligators,
Alligators. Yeah.
that they'd crawl up on a stack of lumber or whatever and sleep up there because these alligators would bark at night. Do you realize that?
Yep.
They wouldn't. They'd keep us awake. And then if we moved during the time, and we moved about once a week, 50 miles maybe, and we were tactical, no lights. People would walk ahead of the trucks so I could see where they were going. And then they'd say, get out and put up your mosquito bar, but walk around and chase out all the scorpions and whatever else was there. And the moss hanging out of the trees had these big spiders.
And tarantulas? Yeah.
And so you do that, and then you put up that thing in the dark, and you crawl in there, and you sleep, and the next morning you look up, and there's a couple of those in the top of it.
All right.
Well, anyway, but digging what happened, you have to have 2 men to go into these foxholes. And you better be down, because the colonel would come along with a 4-foot rule, not 3. Say, if you don't get that far down, you're going to get run over. We're coming through here. We're going to roll right over this territory, and you'll be dead. So we would dig all night in the moonlight.
So you got to do all of that even though you were in the headquarters company? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I had learned something too. As chief of the section, I lost a typist one time, and I was where was I? Anyway, I said, give me another typist. Well, then someone knocked at the door and said, Mr. Keller, Sergeant Keller, so-and-so, we have a typist for you. I turned around and I looked, and there was the biggest Indian I had ever seen. I thought of a typist, they made a mistake. So he talked in an Indian type of way with me, and I said, finally, do you type? And he said, oh yes, or something like that. I found out he had an anthropology degree from Stanford University, and he was very able, And he and I got to be the greatest friends, and he told me he was a very good typist, very good, very able. He told me, he said, I have a large ranch up in Montana at, what was it? Lodge Grass, Montana. And we were very, very good friends. He'd come down and tell us about his anthropology studies, and he wasn't done with that yet. He wrote a wonderful book for your table in your house to read that I got later. He always wanted me to come up there and see him, but I never did. I couldn't afford it. Could leave my family in Michigan and go up there. But anyway, what happened to him? He got demoted somehow. He did something that they thought was dangerous. I don't know what it was. I never got up to Lodge Grass. He had a large herd of cows up there, and he was well worth money. And then he got into the book printing businesses, and up there about Indians and so on. That's a side story.
All right. So you're, after that time in Texas, then at that point, after Texas, is that when they ship you out to go over to England then?
Yes, we had to go. We had, my wife went home in July, and we were prepped to go over, and so 3 months later in September, I shipped out for Camp Shanks, New York, and that was right across the river from West Point.
Yep.
And we were there to be redressed, that type of thing. And then we crossed, and the very interesting thing, I wound up on what was called the boat that Columbus was on.
What?
The
Santa Maria?
Santa Maria, one of these little boats made over there in California, I guess
So
it was.
one of the Liberty ships then? Or,
Yeah. But anyway, it was like this, I came back on the largest canard line there was on the ocean in January up to the North Atlantic, and then the waves were, I believe they were half a mile. The ship would come up, hit like that on the water, and one day we were playing craps down in the basement, And the captain said, everybody that's got a Bible, go home and get on your roost and start praying.
Mm-hmm.
The water's coming over the 5th floor up.
Wow. All right.
We got
Now,
back to New York.
how was the trip over? You're taking the Liberty ship across the Atlantic.
Yeah, we were zigzagged over
Right.
to.
Did
see
you
where
land
we
in
landed.
Glasgow or someplace
Yeah,
else?
we got over there to. We landed in Marseille.
Okay, so you didn't go to England initially. You just went to southern
No,
France,
we went through past.
past Gibraltar, and
Yeah,
okay, and then you were sailing in convoy still at that point. Were you sailing with a convoy?
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We got convoyed right to there. We had a General Hafner from charge of the division. He was from Chicago, and he was not regular army, you know. And he said, when we got there, a lot of other was quite a big port, and all the other units that landed in Marseille were shipped out in trucks
Mm-hmm.
to meet them. After 3 weeks on the ocean, you can't walk.
Yeah.
So they said, well, there's going to be a new base 22 miles north of Marseille. It's going to be Delta Base. It'll be a big place, but now there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
Only one man knows the guide on how you're going to find it at night.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 22 miles and it's raining. So we started out full pack, except I wasn't carrying my M1. And I had regular shelter halves, you know, and all that stuff. And we walked and walked and walked, and it seemed like the guy was cutting circles. He never was going to get there. Anyway, finally, the guy and I, he was from Zealand, by the way. We were together during our service. We said, we just fell right in the mud, and there we lay. We pulled our shelter house over us and laid right there with the rain pouring down on us till morning. Somebody came and picked us up. These are interesting things, you know. You had to be strong and tough.
Mm-hmm.
We were. But then I got another situation you'd be interested in. During the war, Patton got ahead of us, miles and miles, which meant we were not getting rations, K rations especially anymore, C rations maybe. Well, anyway, finally we ran out of food, and we knocked on a door, in Prince's door. Where were we? Oh, we were in Alsace, up in the mountains. And she came to the door, and we said, we're hungry. Do you have any food? And she said, well, I don't have some, but she said, I know that some of the neighbors have potatoes. If you want to go kick down the doors,
Mm-hmm.
you can find some potatoes, and I'll fry them. So she let us in. And I said, is there any place to sleep? She said, I have one day bed or something. What do you used to call those things everybody had? Bunk.
Mm-hmm.
What do they call them? Anyway, she said, one sleep on that and two on the floor. There were three of us. So every third night we'd get off the floor. Well, this girl wanted to learn English and we wanted to learn German. So she helped us and she showed us her pictures, we showed us ours. And for a couple of weeks, with the blinds drawn, we would climb up on the bed and listen to BBC, which was against the law.
You weren't allowed to listen to the
No,
BBC?
we were not. Even division headquarters were not allowed, but we knew most of it. We knew most of what was going on.
Right.
I was at the rear echelon, by the way, all the time. Not rear, not forward.
Right.
So we stayed there a couple of weeks. We thought she was a very good friend. See? We talked and lived, and you had to put the blackout just like you did in Grand Rapids at that time when we lived there. And so we got a notice that we had to go forward somewhere, and we were 10 of us on that personnel carrier, you know. We got out, we went to wave at her goodbye, you know, and she came out of the house and she hollered, "Heil Hitler." Like that, you know. Well, anyway, that's life over there. You get used to that type of thing. anyone gets in the Army, if I'm talking to you, don't be surprised at anything,
Mm-hmm.
or even where you go or what you're going to experience.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be well worth your time, and you'll never forget it, and it did you good to be in the Army.
All right. So let's follow your unit. You land in Marseille, and you went from Marseille? You went to the Delta base, and,
Up to,
and then you kept going up into the Vosges toward the Vosges Mountains.
well, we went first of all through Hitler's land.
That will
was
be
called,
after. Well, that's after you get out of France.
Yeah, after we got up to the top there near Dijon, beyond there. Yes, and then we got, let's see, after we crossed, I told you, over to, I know, yeah, we were over there, and we crossed the Rhine into Worth, to another town called Worth, W-R-T-H. Very interesting, because before we left, we decided if we had a son, his middle name was going to be Worth.
Mm-hmm.
And in Worth, it was a city where they make cigars, and there was a big factory there full of cigars.
Mm-hmm.
We helped ourselves. Anyway, let's see what else.
Well, what you had mentioned, so you were in France at the time of the Battle of the Bulge.
Yes.
Now that would have been
No.
or
We were in Belgium.
okay, you did go up into Belgium.
We got to Belgium, yes. That was where, I think, am I right?
Yeah, that's where the
Yeah.
Bulge took place.
It was called, what is that town?
Well, Bastogne was the Bastogne was the
Yes,
town.
Bastogne, yes.
That's where the 101st
And there's
Airborne
where
was.
General McAuliffe
Mm-hmm.
told the German nuts, remember?
Right.
Great story.
Okay.
Well, this after Hitler, or after Patton was gone,
Mm-hmm.
I came back from Scotland, and this man was in charge
Mm-hmm.
of this whole event.
Right.
There were two other generals there for a short time. I was reading in here one of them, and then I remembered that there was two who preceded him after Patton left. Now about Patton, anything you want to know?
Well,
Or do you know everything?
well, what I want to do here at this point is try to kind of follow your
Oh, I
story
see.
in order
Yes,
as much as
okay.
possible.
Yeah.
So your unit goes up from the Marseille area up past Dijon. You get into the Vosges Mountains and Alsace, and then up into Belgium as
Yes.
part of the counterattack against the Germans. Then in the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
So then you're pushing, and then you push through Belgium, and then do you,
Well, no.
or do you go back down to
Actually-
Alsace, or
Actually, as far as I know, I wasn't ever facing battle
Right.
with my brother. I
Right.
had my M1,
Right.
but I was not. I was
Right.
ready. We all was ready. But and nevertheless, the Battle of the Bulge seemed like the end of the war came very shortly thereafter. Did it?
not really? I mean, the Bulge is sort of December 44,
Oh, yes, December.
January 45.
Okay. Yeah. We were located on the Belgium. Did we get out of there?
44, December 44.
Huh?
That's the day Phil was Daryl was born.
What'd she say?
She was just saying it was December 44, but okay, we knew that part.
Yeah. I mentioned that, Crystal. But then let's see, until the end of the war, till Roosevelt died,
Mm-hmm.
we were in, I guess we were, well, we moved so many times, I really can't say.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can't think right
your
now.
divisional map has you going up is into Belgium, and then from Belgium across, or the kind of southeastern Belgium across into Germany. It looks like. So anyway.
Yeah, we were back in Germany.
Now,
yes.
doing the work that you were doing in the headquarters was part of what you were doing, kind of keeping track
All
of,
the time.
of the casualties in the division?
Oh, yes, yes. And actually, while replacing the dead,
Mm-hmm.
what you call that, after the grave diggers.
As
what
grave
do you call them?
registration?
Anyway, the grave personnel, dead. we had to replace them. The firework was still going on,
Right.
you know, until the end.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you where exactly we were. I could name some towns. And one was very interesting. We were never traveled to ever travel alone, you know, anywhere without two of us guys came night and we were in a little town. And we were going down the street, slopping, mister, slopping, you know. And some woman stuck her head out of the window and she shouted, "Oh, shut up and come on up." She said, "I've been here 45 years. She was from St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And so she took us in and gave us some schnapps and so on. But after the war was actually that far gone, you know, the Elbe was passed, I guess. And the Germans had got what they had coming from the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
And the Reichstag had been blown up or whatever. However, we had the Germans cooking breakfasts for us. The interesting thing was we had no transportation except army transportation. So many of these towns were so flattened you couldn't get through them. You'd have to make a road around them. And the bricks were all over the road, you know, and other things. I don't know. The thing that bothered me most, I think, when we were in Alsace, the kids, barefooted, would be climbing in the snow, come out and want our coffee grounds, eat the coffee grounds we throw away. Sometimes we're mean enough to not want to throw them away. You get calloused when I'd see these people riding around on a little cart, somebody pushing, and they were sitting on a bag of marks, German marks. They thought they had some money, like I would now. You know, if the war came here, I'd think I had a few thousand. I'd be writing on them, but they weren't worth only 3 cents to the 100 marks.
Right.
Oh, I don't know. War's funny. Things you remember and things you don't.
Now, as you get to the end of the war, where does your division wind up? Where were you
in
when?
Innsbruck.
Okay.
Innsbruck. Oh, yes. That's interesting because they said Innsbruck hasn't been bombed, and as German as would, and he said in Austria would be, you know, even Linz or any of the other stuff. So they said go down there and liberate or bomb up the city of Innsbruck. Well, so we toured down there in trucks and so on. We got within sight of Innsbruck. Of course, it's down the valley. You could see it down there. And out of the gates went open and thousands of people came running a mile down the road. Me no German, me no German. So we just pushed them away and kept going, you know. And the forward people cleared the first south half of the city and said, we're going to take this over to sleep. We're going to live here. It's going to be our, what do you call it, camp for a while. And so we chased them all out into the mountains. Chased some sick people out of their beds, made them carry their own clothing and their own food out of the cellars and so on. I remember one time, when we took over, I personally, a couple other guys, took over a nice, what you call a condo now. And it was just like living at home. They had everything. But these women came sneaking back. One day I looked out and I saw smoke coming out of the door of they had an outer building out there. And I knocked on the door and they wouldn't tell me. I said, I just want to see what's going on in here. Where's the smoke coming from? And the woman came to the door and she said, would you like a pancake?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, we're making pancakes. We sneaked into town, you know. So I let them stay. But she said, we'll bake you some cookies if you can get us some sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she said, I can wash your clothes and I have an electric clothes dryer.
Mm-hmm.
This is before I ever heard a thing like that in this country. I came back to Washington, to Detroit, where I lived, and nobody in our family had one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And there's had a big grand piano, and I used to play a little bit. And lots of wine.
So how long did you stay in Innsbruck?
From
Sort of May to July, or
about 3 years, 3 months,
3
something
months,
like
yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed until an order came up from Patton, actually. And he said he was interviewing, he was talking with our general,
Mm-hmm.
whatever his name was, I mentioned him. And he said, you were typing and you were taking this down fast. I noticed, who is that guy?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he told Sergeant Keller, he said, I'll send him to me if he ever needs him.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, he remembered me. So they sent for me, and the guy that from Zealand
Mm-hmm.
over here, he and his father owned the Zealand Bank,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a file clerk.
Mm-hmm.
He had more files in his head than that files did. And the Army regulations are so darn changeable.
Mm-hmm.
Every day you get a new one, you know. And they want to throw out the old one. I went through all that stuff too in my department. And so to keep up with the AGs, it was a real problem. And so he was on file. That's why he got sent back. And the other guy was a kind of a clown. They said, what do you want him for? Well, we want him to be the Catholic bishop's aide up there, take care of his wine business. Wine.
Wine cellar?
And he was a lush.
Mm-hmm.
So the three of us went up there. He went to Baltimore, and we came down home eventually.
All right. So that's gotten us there sort of to the end of the war in Europe, and it's ending in the Pacific. And now you're reassigned to Patton's headquarters. Now, where was Patton based? Where was his headquarters?
Bad Tolls.
Okay.
And that's that place that's like Warm Springs, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very expensive place where people get. But I went there to see these places.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 2-3 miles from there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful place. Hitler had this built after he became chancellor.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he was done with it, Patton wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like owning the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
It was really. They had all the playing fields out back, and I wrote my wife a letter. I said, send me my tennis rackets
Mm-hmm.
and my pants and so on. She said, what's going on over there? Well, I said, I can get anything to eat I want over here. Anything. We had just lived it up in Patton's headquarters.
All right. Now this tape is getting close to an end, so I'm going to stop this. Keller, we've gotten to the point in your story now where the war in Europe has ended, and now you've been assigned to General Patton's headquarters at Bad Tolz in Bavaria near Munich. At this point, Patton is essentially the military governor of Bavaria as part of the American occupation. Now, did you have any actual contact with the general himself? Or did,
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there were lots of offices. There were lots of people who were secretaries and stenographers and so on. I was one of many. However, I think it was a little special. He seemed to remember that he had met me and heard to know I was a good typist.
Right.
So, awful times he would ask me to write the endorsements and these top secret things. And we were aware that Eisenhower had told him not to fraternize with the Germans. Well, because our room faced the outside where his pictures were taken by people from all over, especially the United States. The congressman wanted to come over.
Right.
And so we would watch this go on every day, the flotilla of the airplanes and so on, to wind up. But anyway, the Germans, generals, staffs, cars would pull up. I never saw so many, about every day there'd be 1, 2, or 3. And everybody knew it in there, even from the signal corps, what was happening with the telephone and this. And we talked, kids, you know, non-commissioned officer talked to. Well, anyway, we knew that he was fraternizing. I have had promises to him that I would tell you nothing. Personally, I won't. However, I found out through the internet that it's common knowledge that he was fraternizing. And he had plans that was not in the knowledgeable of most people. And if you know what they are, I'm not going to repeat them. I don't want to be held responsible. Because it's the way it is in the world. I don't want to know too much or say too much. However, this is just interesting. From my point of view, this boy that from
New Zealand.
and I decided to go out on Lake Tagersey, which is far close from there. And one Sunday afternoon or Saturday, that shoreline was lined with summer houses of these German generals. And we thought we'd go over, see if we could see Patton's over there. We got as close as we could, you know, without being conspicuous, taking pictures. And so we had binoculars. We didn't see his car over there. That's a fact. I have nothing I would say more than that. Because I think it seems to be general knowledge that he had something planned that would have been unheard of if it had gotten fully out. And the people that worked there knew this. I don't want to ever be asked to say, what did I know? Nothing, actually, as far.
Yeah. Well, Patton got himself into a certain amount of political trouble while
He did
while
all the
he
way
was.
along. I didn't know so much that was known until I read that. Did you? You've seen this one, haven't you? She brought it to me the other day. Down here from the print shop.
Oh, right.
In fact, I didn't know that anybody had access to that much information.
Well, a lot of things from that period have been declassified.
We know
and-
from the movie, when George Scott played it so well, that Eisenhower and he were not on the best of terms.
Yeah, although the movie itself is actually distorted rather badly in some ways because it's based on General Bradley's memoirs, and Bradley hated Patton. And so the more serious biographers of Patton who've kind of looked at things since then have a little bit more of a level view of things. So Eisenhower basically valued Patton or respected what he could do.
I think so.
And saved him from, basically he saved his military career during the war because he was useful. You know, he was the best combat general they had, so at that level, so we found work for him. But after the war, at the point when he died, he was probably close to being taken out of there because he was involved in things he shouldn't have been.
I don't know. Some people say, well, the company, another country's personnel ran into him to kill him, but I don't think so.
No. I mean,
I think that it just was an accident.
Yeah, that seems to have been pretty clear. But he was certainly a colorful kind of character.
Yeah. Well, he was a picturesque person, and he could do his thing. He was a wealthy man, and he always had done. And so he had his own way of doing things. As far as where he was there, he wasn't disliked. He would do this. He would say, everybody will wear their helmet liners and tie it in their ties today, even
Mhm.
in the summer and the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
And don't come under my office and let me hear anybody talking
Mm-hmm.
or rattling anything, you know. All the halls in their
Mm-hmm.
plush carpet, so that he would not be disturbed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the libraries was only up in the second floor, and often I'd be across in the other room doing something, and we'd come out the door at the same time. One time I ran right into it, and I saluted him, and he put his hand on my head and said, "That's all right, Sergeant." You know, he could have bullied me, but he was not that. He was human.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say so. I hear people saying, well, when anybody in this town knows I ever saw Patton, they would call me Patton Sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't like it because I couldn't say. He slapped somebody, so he slapped somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so
Yeah. Anyway.
he liked publicity.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to say that.
All right. Now, in general, what was life like at Bad Tolls while you were there? I mean, you were saying a little bit about that. You were in.
Bad tones.
Yeah. What was it like living there?
It was like a palace. After all, I'd been through Louisiana,
Yeah.
from the top to the bottom to the top.
Mm-hmm.
I said to Crystal often, she was reading me some of this, I never thought I'd arrive at a place in the army where I'd say I don't need anything.
Mm-hmm.
I got everything I want.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it was, like living in a place where we had all the food we wanted. Oh, he was quite a musician too,
Mm-hmm.
in this way. When he got there, I don't know that there wasn't a church in there, as what you call them,
A chapel or whatever.
chapel.
Mhm.
Yeah, but there was an organ there. And if it wasn't there, they tell me he put it in, had it put in.
Mm-hmm.
And he would go there on Sunday afternoon and have organists, good ones,
Mm-hmm.
come and open up the speakers and play very good organ recitals.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd sit there himself enjoying them. And we could go too and sit.
Now, what actual work did you have to do? Were you kind of keeping track of personnel
What was I
transfers?
doing?
Yeah.
You read those stories. I was so busy, I didn't know what I was doing. I was doing everything. I told you, reports and returns does everything.
Mm-hmm.
We were getting trains lined up to
Yeah.
come to the coast, and we had to have people who spoke different languages on the telephone. Telephones, I never tried to do that. I was only English. I was not a very good, what's the word?
Linguist?
Linguist. No, I was not. And I didn't have to. We had, one time I think we had 13 waves and wax in there, in the offices, who could handle that better than I could. And I was more or less putting in this box and taking it to that box and so on, and deciding who got what to do.
But you were keeping track of the movements of all of the soldiers
Yes.
who were being mustered out and sent
That
back
was one of
home.
the things that Patton's office was doing,
Mm-hmm.
getting these people to the ports, and a lot of other things. They went into files.
Mm-hmm. So were you tracking supply shipments and things like that too, or
I
just
wasn't
people?
personally.
Okay.
There's so many units. I mean, in an army headquarters with, I don't know how many secretaries and so on were there. I knew I was so busy on my job
Yep.
that I couldn't get away some weekends
Right.
from there.
Now, did you have a regular team of people that you worked with, or did you work by yourself, or what? How did that work?
Well, I can't say. There was so much movement and stuff around there. I can't say that I.
So were individual people being reassigned a lot? So somebody would come in and work for a while and then go someplace else, or
Not that I know. Not that I can remember. It just seems like a big, busy office.
so
can't say
so who did you report to, or who gave you your orders?
I don't recall any. Stuff landed on my desk I was to do, and who put it there.
Okay.
I can't help you there.
All right.
It's too far in my past.
All right. Now, I
I was
noticed
there for about 3 months, I guess.
something like that. Yeah. Okay. I did notice in your correspondence here, you had a letter that you sent back to your wife back in 43, and you told her, never become a whack and don't and that kind of. Now,
I don't remember reading that. I don't think I got that
I just
far.
opened at the volume, and there it was. Now, but you mentioned you're working with women's service personnel and so forth. What impression did you have?
I wouldn't think of that now as being important.
But what impression did you have of the women you were working with
Well,
over
we
there?
didn't, all these years, I was working with men.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly women come in and women chat and they talk and they laugh and they don't work. And I don't know. I don't know. They're probably like men in some ways. I don't know. It's
Okay.
beyond me. I don't know anymore.
All right. Now, at what point then do you get sent home?
Sir,
When did you get sent home?
when did I get some help?
Sent home.
Oh, sent home.
Kind of.
Well, let's see. I went down to. No. I came back in December from Sweden, not Sweden.
Germany.
No, I was up at school.
Oh, that's right. You were up in
Scotland.
Scotland. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's the
came back
other
from
piece
Scotland.
of this. Okay.
I was on detached service up there,
Mm-hmm.
and I came back and Patton was gone,
Mm-hmm.
as I remembered. And they said, you have to, who was, I think he was there at the
McAuliffe.
time.
Yeah.
And they told us we have to entrain for Hamburg,
Mm-hmm.
for separation from the States, or to go back to States.
Mhm.
And I remember getting my ticket to go to Hamburg. It was east, about 100 miles, somewhere over toward Russia. And there I told you we got new clothes.
Mm-hmm.
We got Eisenhower jackets and boots and so on. I hit the train for Le Havre.
Mm-hmm.
I got over there, Le Havre, and it was getting towards Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in Camp Lucky Strike for a couple of weeks, sleeping on the ground, waiting till the port. A lot of the port had been destroyed, and so the ships were not coming and going as fast as they should. And they were waiting for transportation to New York, of course. And I don't know how long I was there, but meantime, we were expecting to be sent to to the east.
Mm-hmm.
We were expecting that we'd get the order, and we didn't want that to happen. And was it in August when the bomb was dropped in Hiroshima?
Yeah. That's 45 though.
Huh?
That's in 1945.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're talking about the fall of 45.
Mm-hmm.
And then I must have set sail very close to Christmas time because I got into.
Okay. So, but when you were in Camp Lucky Strike in December, so you had to sleep out on the ground in northern
With
France.
blankets, yes.
They had that camp up for quite a while, but there's no buildings.
I don't recall. I don't recall.
That must have been kind of a come down after being in battles.
I don't think I was there very long, actually.
All right.
I can't say that many years. All I can remember Camp Lucky Strike.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there were buildings there. I don't know.
No, it might not have been. I mean, it was a lot of. I think the people that I've
Yeah.
talked to went through those camps. I mean, I think they were mostly camping out. They may just not have built much. They were just staging areas.
And I wasn't there very long, you know, and I got a ship out of there.
Okay.
I think there was a sign out there that said, "You're only 9,000 miles from New York," or 5,000.
Yeah.
But
All right.
we got in that. Then it became January before I got home, of course. And the North Sea was, or the North Atlantic was fog and fog.
Yeah. Except for the big storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now then.
Oh.
Yeah.
I have another facet you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a poet, but I've learned a lot of poetry. And before we're done, I want to recite one to you. Maybe it'll be Columbus. I recite poetry and I go, Another of my interests is astronomy, and I lecture on astronomy to certain people. We have a men's club down here at Middle Ark, and I have lectured on astronomy a few times there. And I also recite poetry. I don't write it, but historical poetry. Or I would say for you, I would get to give you the Lincoln to get his pretty good dress or something like that. But Columbus has always won somebody I always know. I'll recite it for you if you want it.
All
When
right.
you have time.
All right. Now, once you get back across the ocean, did you land in New York or somewhere else? When you got back across the ocean, did you land in New York or did you land somewhere
I
else?
landed in New York.
All right.
Yeah. And from there we caught a train to camp in Indiana, camp.
Atterbury, probably.
Atterbury, yeah. You're right on the ball.
Yeah, well, most guys coming back went through there.
Yeah.
So it was that or Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, usually.
I got home on the 9th of January,
All right.
46. I was gone not quite 3 years, 15 months, and my son was 13 months old when I got home.
All right. And then from there, you went back to
I was
teaching.
I had left my teaching. Then I was not didn't have my degree yet, and I thought I guess I'll try something else. And it was in the middle of the year, January, so I first of all I went to the Calvinator plant and I worked on Calvinator refrigerators. The rest of that winter out there on south of Grand Rapids. What is that place out there?
Wyoming. Yeah.
And then I came up on Turner, and I worked there and put computers, not computer, but those hand counters on, you know, putting those motors on these crank things, you used to have for you as electric. And then I couldn't find a place. My wife was staying with her folks, so I stayed there for a little while. And they were building concert huts out on South Grand Rapids. And those things were something like this room, round. And I couldn't get one, so right away I got a call from Conklin, and they said, have you ever been a sergeant? I said, yes. And they said, we need one. The kids out there through the principal through the window, and we need a new principal. Well, I wasn't planning to come back right then. I got my degree, but I said, well, I'll try it. Yeah, I'll come out there and help you. But I did. I went out there and I took the job and I straightened the kids out. And I taught there 4 or 5 years after that. But when my children come along, I sent them to Lutheran schools.
All right. Now, you actually, at the beginning of the interview, you kind of covered something of your career and what you did afterwards. So we kind of have followed that part
Here.
Already.
Here, since I got out of service, okay.
Well, you told us that already. You talked about being teacher and principal in different places.
So on, but we bought a property on the lake out here, and we built a new home out there. And we raised for 15 years our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren on the lake. And that was our life, Chris and I. And I had a shop room where I had an overhead saw, and I made all kinds of rocking horses and all this type of stuff. And I kept track of the weather every day for 15 years, and I've got them stacked right in there. Everything we did and bought and sold and all that type of thing. Anyway, now I broke my leg, and I broke my shoulder, and I broke my wrist, and I broke a lot of bones, and I've had prostate problems. I forgot that. Anyway, right now I'm afraid that I might have a stroke or something, and none of this would have been taken care of. And I wanted to do something before, so it wasn't lost.
All right.
So we've been here now since 1988, here in this house. We had this built.
All right. Now, overall, what would you say was the effect of your time in the service? How did being in the Army for 3 years wind up affecting you?
I think it made a man of me, actually. I was too much, well, I was never big enough to join the ranks of what you'd call an athletic
Mm-hmm.
type of person. And I think it's gone too far the other way now. Too much of that, not enough academies.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are not taught enough to make their lives worthwhile after they wear out, like everybody says, you know. But for me, it was an experience I wouldn't want to repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Thought it was a human thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it to any people who say, oh, I wished I'd been in, you know, that hadn't been in. Off they feel guilty or something. That's not it. I don't need that to live like you did in Louisiana or anything like that. But if you're educated and you have, like I got educated
Mm-hmm.
eventually. No, I am I'm a godly person too. I had a very unusual experience. You want to hear about it?
Sure.
When I was 16 years old, a converted Jewish rabbi came from Israel to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going from Big Rapids to Everett, around to the very places. The question was he a genuine one?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he was. It was proved that he was a converted Jewish rabbi. They're rare,
Mm-hmm.
and now they tell me there are quite a lot of them. And a rabbi is a very top of the class, as far as I'm concerned, an educated person,
Mm-hmm.
knows something. And he said to a bunch of us high school kids, and I was 16 years old, my father had just died.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you kids are coming here, you want, when he found he was coming to Everett, where I was living, the church, the Methodist church, there was going full.
Mm-hmm.
So we stood back in the back of the room, kind of boys will in high school, you know,
Mm-hmm.
kind of laughing a little bit, making noise. He said, well, Friday night I'll make a place for you boys. I'll have a seat right up front if you
Mm-hmm.
want to sit down. I'll be here 5 nights and you'll hear a lot of things. Friday night we took the seats up there and he said, now he said, we're going to sing a song. And when I say, come up and shake my hand, something will happen to you, which we did. As soon as he took his hand, he said, God be with you. The Spirit came into our lives, into mine. All of us. We were so struck that moment.
Mm-hmm.
When that service was out, we said, what can we do for the Lord? Guess what we did? We'll go down to Breckinger's Harbor and break up the square dance. Can you imagine that? That's what we tried to do. And they told us, get out of there, they're going to throw us downstairs. Bunch of kids. Well, I have enjoyed a Christian life ever since.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now to kind of close this out, you had suggested that you recite a poem. Did you want to
Yeah,
recite?
You know all about Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
You know the geography of the area.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Behind us lay the gray Azores, behind the gate of Hercules. Before us not the ghost of shores, before us only shoreless seas. The stout mate said, thought of home as a spray of salt wave washed his swarthy cheek. What shall we say? Brave Admiral say, if we sight now the seas of dawn, well, you shall say at break of day, sail on, sail on, sail on and on. They sailed and sailed, then spake the mate, this mad sea shows his teeth tonight. He lies awake with lifted teeth, lifted brow with lifted bite, lifted teeth with lifted bite. Now speak, brave Admiral. What shall we say if hope is gone? Why, you shall say at break of day, sail on, sail on, sail on. They sailed, the winds might blow until at last the blanchman said, why not even God would know, should I and all my men fall dead. These very winds forget their waves, and God from these dread seas are gone. Now speak, brave Admiral, speak and say, what shall we say when hope is gone? The words leaped like a flaming sword. Sail on, sail on, sail on and on. They sailed until one dark night of all dark nights, and then a speck of light. It grew to be a scarlet flag unfurled. It grew to be time's burst of dawn. He gave the world his greatest lesson on, sail on. I have a lot of historical novels. I have a book of poetry that I recite to myself if I can't sleep.
All right. Well, the whole thing makes for a very good story for us, and I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to tell it to me.
Well, don't push me too far. I'm not ready to do very much of this stuff, but for what it's worth, you know. I have a good life. I have a good wife. We've been married 67 years. Mm-hmm. And we have a good family. I have a boy, Phil, and this is interesting. I don't really associate it with your university, I don't think he is. But he's been with Lear, and now Lear is gone, and he is quite a wealthy man himself. And he decided his wife was taking in preschool children. Mm-hmm. For about 40 years, she's done a wonderful job in this town. Well, he has worked nights with Lear, but he knows all about child psychology and this type of thing. He's a very brilliant boy, but he's 62 now. He said, you know what I'm going back to college. He started York's College over there, you know. He said, I didn't know, he said, I didn't think some of the profs, this was years ago when he came out of service, I didn't think they were teaching me much. He said he'd been studying Greek philosophy and so on. Mm-hmm. He said, I don't think I could learn much there, so he quit. I was financing him. He took 2 years, and now he said, I think I want to go back and get a degree, and I want to take it in child psychology at the preschool level. Mm-hmm. So he said, I'll eventually build a school of my own. And so he's going over to over here, it says, Muskegon, which has over there at school. And he has built a model like this of what a real preschool ought to be, what it ought to have in it, and everything is to scale and everything. And then he's the top of his class. They just marvel what he's doing over there. But I say he's too old to do this. He's too old. He's older than I was when I quit. I quit teaching 58, 58. Mm-hmm. I had 35 years. And I had a wife and I stopped. But I've done church work ever since and taught Bible and so on. But he's so unwrapped up, I just don't, he's going to take, he had 14 hours, I think. Mm-hmm. And he just worked day and night on this, and he loves it. But he said he was going over to Chicago, or to Detroit a couple of weeks ago, and he was going to study about how they could fix playgrounds better, so there wasn't so many accidents on. And he says, people expect that, but it's always going to happen. They're going to get hurt there. So he's into that too. I don't know.
All right. All right. Well, I think that
we only have 2 boys. We have about 8 great-grandchildren.
All right, well, I think that kind of closes out the formal interview part. So I'll go there.